I thought maybe I would spend just a little bit more time on the spirit and intent, because I really think that the one area that that Canada and the First Nations have had the hardest talking to each other about, and really, nothing can happen unless you understand and are willing to talk about what is the spirit of this relationship that we embarked on, and what did we intend to get out of it, you know. And in today's world, it is so different from the way it was in 1876 in that time period, where you had leaders like John A. Macdonald that had their agenda, and their agenda did not include participation by Indigenous people in the building of Canada. Okay, it's there. It's in the history books. It's in the coffee room stories of Canada. It's there, and he had a number of people who worked with him that supported that notion, and so we inherited that way of thinking. We inherited all of that, and today now we have to put a blanket on top of John A. Macdonald to remind us that he wasn't always a good advocate for our country. You know, that he really sometimes took us down the wrong trail, and so now we have to deal with his problem. So, spirit and intent. Well, I want to start by taking some stuff out of here, because I think really this is what speaks to that part of treaties. And some of the key concepts that come out, yeah, let's move this a little bit out of the way before I wrap myself on it, because I don't like standing still. Ino sawitagsuin is one concept. Ino means people. Ino, okay? People in general, okay, general. Sawitagsuin. What that refers to is, sawita is like a blessing from the Creator. And so these are the gifts that have been given to us by the Creator. So it's one of the foundational concepts that the Crees were operating from in approaching treaties. So, and they by using the word ino, they're saying these are the gifts that are for everyone. They're not isolated to. If they had meant just us, they would have said nehio, okay? Or if they thought it was the Dene up north, they would have said chipwaniwak. You know, that's the words they would have used. But they used inu, which means all people. So, good place to start. Sawitagosuin is a way of looking at the relationship to creation. Everything is a gift from the Creator. And in the order of creation for the Nehiawak, I don't speak for anybody else, I speak for themselves, Nehiawak, the order of creation is such that it Nehio na pewegi squirrel, the Cree man and woman were the last to be created. And not because they're special, okay? Drop that notion. Not because they're special, but because they need the most help to live. They are so helpless. They depend on everybody. They depend on carrots. They depend on Saskatoon berries. They depend on rabbits. They depend on gophers. They depend on the eagle to carry their prayers for them. They depend on all of creation. And so that notion of Sawitagusuin, that's what it's teaching. It's teaching that as Nehiawak, we have to forever give thanks for all that has been given to us. Okay, and they're sacred. Those gifts are sacred, requiring all kinds of protocols and ceremonies and songs and dances and stories, not only to keep them alive, but to continue to maintain that sacredness, that sacred relationship with the Creator. So that's one. So that kind of begins to color, you know, where this the oral side is coming from. Okay, so that underlying belief system then determines. So inside of that sacredness of gifts are a number of sort of I guess poles of a teepee. That's what we use nowadays. The teepee is no longer a place to wrap yourself in a buffalo robe and minus 40 and try to stay warm. Okay, that we don't live in teepees anymore, as much as the Americans would like to believe that sometimes, or the Europeans, Germans. But it has become a teaching. It's a school. The teepee is a school. And so the poles become, they carry the teachings of what the elders have shared with us. So one of those poles is Mio Wichetuin. Mio Wichetuin. Mio means good. Wichetuin means Kawichewat means to walk with them, to walk with a person. Kawichewat. Okay. So Mio Wichetuin is about living and walking together, okay, in a good way, So that's one of the pillars that that teaches and has inside of that concept a whole raft of laws and ceremonies and stories to reinforce that with the children, with the people. Okay, Miwichetuan. What is the law of how you treat your wife? What is the law of how you treat your children? That's all part of Miwichetuan. Okay, and when you talk about children, there is even another subcategory of laws. Oh, Piginawasuin. Pinamen means, okay, pinamen, you lift up. So, Piginawasoin means, I lift up my child so that they become whole, healthy, and what they're intended to be by the Creator. Okay, that's my responsibility. So inside of that are all these laws that shape our society and our way of being with each other. Okay, so in the story from Takakop, the opening statement and on chapter 6, I think, no, chapter 13 in there says, they gathered together in the morning and they lifted up the pipe to prepare themselves for the negotiations that were to occur. This was on August the 18th. They prayed to be that the negotiations would go well, and that they would be guided by the wisdom of Mamoe o Tawimau. That is one term that is used to describe God, the Creator. Mamoe means all of us. He is the Father of all of us. And it doesn't say Nesto Nehiok, or just the ones with red shirts, or just the ones with, gray hair. All of us. All inclusive. All inclusive. And it's interesting, out of that belief system comes this teaching that I've heard countless times from Getea, the older people. You must at all times respect and honor diversity. If people pray in a different way, you must respect and honor the way they pray. And I think that has made a difference in terms of acceptance by our societies of other people. It's really been I think a coloring of who we are as people, and our relationship with people who are different from us. That doesn't mean we didn't have moments of not getting along. We did. I mean, history is full of stories where we didn't get along, like those Blackfoot would forever come and steal our women, and we couldn't get along with that, So there was moments, but we dealt with it. Poundmaker dealt with it by getting adopted by Chief Crowfoot back in the mid-1800s to bring peace and harmony and that oneness. So, Mamoe Tawimau, another important piece to determine the way the negotiation needed to be handled. Okay, and then on the more practical side, the concept of Wetaskiwin, and you got a town here that's named after that, Wetaskiwin. You call it Wetaskiwin. Okay, Wetaskiwin. It's living together on the land, living together on the land. And that's another part of the belief system that, all of these things are get tied together, when you unpack them. But certainly we Wetaskiwin, because the other fundamental difference between this group and that group is that with this group, land is very much a commodity. It's something to be owned, and so it's like something you put in your pocket and you own it. And you, on this side, it's land is there to be in good relations with us because we depend on it to live. It's our mother. It's our mother, and so that colors how the negotiations would go in terms of surrender, ownership, and consequent result in the treaty. So, Wetaskiwin, that's one of those items we're going to have to continue unpacking. How do we figure this out? We've got such differing views about to the land. Where's the common ground? And I think that's an interesting journey. Where is the common ground here? Where do we start from? And I think in some places it's sort of being worked out in isolated examples, and we need to pay attention to those places. Okay, and the last one I'm going to share with you is Pimatsuin. Pimatsuin. Pimatsuin is a concept of taking care of yourself, taking care of your life. And the reason why I wanted to bring it up is because I think that's one of the other stereotypes we need to park in another corner and let it ferment to whatever it needs to be. The notion that we are unable to take care of ourselves. And we'll talk further about that this afternoon when we talk about the Indian Act. But Pimatsuin is that belief inside of that society of the obligation to take care of yourself in all quarters, and not just economic, and not just, but you have four quadrants to your life according to their belief system, to Nehio and other First Nations. You know, there's four quadrants, there's four parts to us as human beings. So Pimatsuin is about those four places. It's not just going to earn the dollar to put food on the table for your children, but it's also about your emotional health, and we're trying to deal with that today in our communities through community development, through mental health initiatives. You have to take care of that. You have to take care of your mental health. You have to take care of your body. Trying to deal with that too. You know, diabetes is, everybody's got a diabetic relative, and people are dying at an early age because of diabetes. You know, where everybody else lives till they're 85, many of our people are dying at the age of 50. You know, because of diabetes, and a lot of it is the food we eat, the exercise that we don't do, but lifestyle impacts all of that. So those four quadrants, Pimatsuin is about that. And so there are directives and laws that govern that. So that's all part of this life here. So that's what they bring to, and that's what creates that spirit and intent that we need to unpack. And so on this side then, you know, they need to acknowledge, and we've slowly been doing that. TRC really helped to acknowledge one small portion of it. But there are also initiatives out there, economic reconciliation. And that's a whole big chapter in that relationship that's gone wrong. Economic reconciliation today is beginning to unravel what has been happening, what is currently happening, and how to deal with it. There's spiritual reconciliation. I mean, we're struggling with that right now. Many of the Christian churches, as Sylvan said, back in 1930s, their superior recognized it. You're going down the wrong path. You know, you're not doing this right. We have to figure that one out. So all of these things color the discussion around spirit and intent. What is a spirit in which both parties need to acknowledge is the way forward? What do we intend to get out of this? Over here, the primary concern is we are our own people. And number two, we know how to take care of ourselves. And number three, you don't have to tell us how to raise children. We know how. You know, so those issues are all part of that discussion around treaties. It impacts education. You know, if you're talking about children, impacts education, talks about post-secondary education, economic reconciliation. In Saskatchewan, can't build a road to Fond du Lac, but you can sure haul out all the uranium from northern Saskatchewan and make billions of dollars out of it. Where is the ethical and moral responsibility that was intended in a treaty relationship in regards to resources and the welfare of the people? Those are big questions that we need to put our heads to, and it's been happening in small bits and pieces, and it's part of our way forward. Any questions, comments? Or should I go for lunch? Keep going.
Land is the issue. I mean, it's coming home to me that it comes down to land. But here we are as white Europeans, and we're living in these cities, and it's all paved over, and we're living in these apartments, and it's hard for us to keep that connection with land. I grew up on the farm, and I have a connection with land. When I was back in Ontario, I scooped up a piece of the farm that I grew up on, and that's my connection with land. But it seems that we have to keep on somehow learning to reconnect with land. How do you do that?
My comment, as always, with the school boards in Saskatoon, and I get to talk to them, you know, quite often. My comment to them is, number one, change the way you do things in your schools. You know, if you want a child to know what grass feels like, you have to take the child out to the grass. You know, and sometimes that connection to the grass is more important developmentally than taking another problem in mathematics, you know, which is neither here or there. Or you can take that math problem out with you onto the grass. But that, and many First Nations are taking that to heart. Right across Canada, they are taking the children out of the classroom. They're saying, we're failing in the classroom. We're failing them to give them what they need to become people, human beings. So many schools they're taking the curriculum and they're saying, okay, this part we go out into the bush. This part we go and, you know, we've got a science problem that we want to solve. Okay, we'll take it out here and we'll go and skin some rabbits that were caught. You know, teaching them, you know, you have a relationship to this land and the gifts that it holds. And so they go back and forth. So land-based learning is what they call it. But, and in Saskatoon, in the last conversation I had with the Catholic School Board, that was the message I wasn't the only one that told this Catholic School Board. If you're going to build a new school here for that's going to have mostly Cree, people who want to speak Cree, then don't do it like you used to do. Build a school where those kids are going to be moving in and out of that classroom regularly. Find a place where you can take them to do things on the land and build that relationship. So I think there are ways we can do it. We just have to prod our professionals, you know, to jump out of the box on behalf of our children, our grandchildren. Yeah, we got to just keep prodding. It's a long-term problem. But if we don't poke, they won't move. Go ahead.
I have a comment about that, and I really think that the climate change and crisis is pushing the people who only think economically. Because we're not going to have houses or anything if we're polluted, if the rain comes and floods us. So I think there's two things. I mean, we need to learn how to love the land, and economics is going to force us to.
I agree with you, and I think one of the barriers we face is the political jousting that goes around words, you know. Climate change, and you say the word climate change, and you have almost like it's like you know, how we live on it, you know.
one phrase that you said really strikes me, and that's the relationship to the land. And you mentioned, with schools for the Indigenous children, that they get the experience. But I think a real missing link is the non-Indigenous people who don't have a deep relationship with the land, and how to cultivate that. And I think people in this room probably have some kind of relationship with the land. And to deepen that, I know for myself, I grew up close to the land. We had a big garden in our yard, and we were always out in the mountains or the beach or somewhere, but I live on White Avenue now, and I love going for walks in the woods, but sometimes I don't have the time or the energy to go to even those places in the city. And so I really got to thinking this year, and I said, how can I touch into communing with nature? And we have a lovely backyard. It's quite simple, but we have a huge white spruce tree right outside our back door, and a few other trees there. And so every morning, most mornings, I go outside and I stand outside the door. Sometimes I'll go stand under the tree, but sometimes I just stand there and just absorb creation and nature and the energy into me. Look up at the sky. It's always different and it's always beautiful. But it really helps to feed me and to deepen that connection with the land, even in the midst of the city.
Yeah, and the people on this side, they have a relationship to the land. It's a different nature to this side. But you're a farmer. You were a farmer, or you grew up on a farm. You had a relationship to that land. And I think, personally, I don't think we understand the responsibility that comes with that relationship. And I speak specifically, like some of the farming practices are very harmful, and not just to the land, but to the people and the birds and the insects and all that. That is the part I think that we need to deal with. Yeah. We're not against farming. No. We're not against making a living. We're not against people having the sense of ownership for that land. But we're all, I think, the common ground here is we've got to take care of that land and learn to ask questions and not assume that universities and big chemical companies know anything about our land. I think that's where we need to go, and that's where I think that'll begin to tie us together, in a good way. And that's where I say these people here may help this group learn that sense of sacredness and that sense of responsibility to the land.
Harry, on that same topic, could you say something about in Cree, I think there's two words for sin, like pastaku as opposed to
Chinewin, yeah. But before that, somebody wanted.
I just wanted to say that because of all these financial crunches that our governments have put in us, Calgary is saying that they might not be able to mow the grass and kill the dandelions. And I think that would be just great, with mowing the grass, and for goodness sake, leave some dandelions for the bees.
Yeah, and they celebrate this notion of balance is celebrated in the grass dance, in our grass dancer. If you haven't had anybody explain it to you, but in the grass dance, one of the dominant features of the grass dance is the dancer moves always in balance. whatever he does in one direction, he does in the other direction. And the whole dance kind of evolves that way, you know, from beginning to end. So that notion, it's celebrating the sense that grass dancing is a way of saying, you know, balance is important. Balance that keeps you, if you're appreciating the grass dancer and their ability to dance and to give you a sense of the aesthetics of their regalia and what it means, then you're learning about balance. You're learning about balance and appreciating that balance in that dancer. Best I can do right now. Okay, Sylvan reminded me that in the Cree language, of course, we acknowledge there is wrong. We're not the nation that thinks we never do anything wrong. Okay, we're very prone to doing things wrong to each other. To each other. And some of our communities, we suffer greatly because of that. Unforgiving attitudes, and judgmental attitudes, etc. All of those are part of our life. We're human beings. Iniwak. So in the Cree world, in the Cree language, there are actually two ways of describing those wrongs. Okay, the first way is pastahuin. Pastahuin. That's wrongs against humankind. That's the wrongs that are done towards humankind. Your children, your grandchildren, your partner, your neighbor. The clerk at Tim Hortons who gave you the wrong amount of sugar, that's pastahuin. It's wrongs that we do to people, okay? And so there are teachings around that concept of pastahuin and how to reconcile, how to acknowledge. And that becomes part of our conversation around TRC and the reconciliation process, and how do we move forward in a sense of harmony and good faith with each other. Okay, so pastahuin is about people. The second one is ochanehuin. And that is the wrong that we do to the rest of creation. Disrespecting an animal. I remember many times when I was growing up, my mother telling me, don't make that little animal suffer. How you even a fly, pulling its wings off or things like that, It comes from that teaching of Ochanehuin, okay? That teaching of doing wrong to creation. And and when you do wrong to creation and all its different parts and pieces and expressions, then you have to reconcile with it. You have to reconcile that wrong. Just like you do with people. You have to reconcile the wrong that you do. If a hunter disrespects the spirit of the moose while harvesting it, and there is a ceremony that an elder will recommend that person do to bring themselves back into the right relationship with that moose. Okay. Things like that. Lots of ceremonies, lots of songs, lots of opportunities to correct Ochanehuin or pastahuin, both of them.
I had a Navajo teacher, and I would complain about this or that animal. And he always reminded me, they were here first.
And you're right. You're right. Very strong teaching. Know your place. you know, and creation. That's how you stay healthy and stay in good relationship.
And at the powwows, there, as you were saying, there's a ceremony. If an eagle feather falls, then the elders would actually do a ceremony there.
That's right. Yeah, yeah. So there is an elaborate system. Some of it we've lost. A lot of it we've lost, you know, over the last 100 years. But there's enough there to show the complexity and the richness of staying in good relationship with everything. Diego. Okay, so spirit and intent. Any questions about spirit and intent? Are you appreciating that this is not an easy thing? But it's necessary. You know, it's a necessary part.
An observation that when Europeans first came to the land, they recognized that they didn't know how to live here and needed lots of help, and so got lots of help. Enough of us showed up, we started doing our own thing, and decided that we were all smarter than you, we didn't need you. I think we're getting to a place early. I'm sitting here today thinking, thank goodness, thank God for the teachings that you do have. We really need that. We need that.
Yeah, everybody needs that. We need to completely redo the story of Canada. We need to redo it completely, and we need to recognize where its colonial voice and where it's the real story voice is. You know, we need to redo that for our children. We owe it to them. We owe it to them. We owe it to give them a pride in where they live, because we're losing that pride. You know, we're losing that pride as a nation, you know, with all the violence and the disrespect for each other and the name calling and the judgmental attitudes that we have. You know, on both sides. You know.
So the Indigenous colleagues with whom I work at the hospital use terms that I'm only, it's been 20 years now, I'm a slow learner. They use these two terms that I'm only slowly coming to appreciate and understand in a good way in all my relations. You're talking about this.
Yeah, wakotoin, yeah, all my relations, yeah. And miupmatsuin would be in a good way, good life, you know, leading a good life.